when you arrived at Oxford University back in 1988, you also discovered that the psychologists were studying sight in one lab and hearing in another, and that neuroscience and psychology had always explored senses separately. But you knew that all our senses are immediately connected. So teach us about your multisensory perception and your cross-model research methodology that you call Sensploration.
I arrived in Oxford as a student in 1988 and then sort of came back as a lecturer in 1997. And it was on my return that I got sort of shown to a lab. There was no electricity at the time. The walls were all painted black. And with a torch, kind of the administrator said, "Oh, this could be yours," pointing around into this most unappealing looking kind of a space with no windows. And that became home for a while. And that lab was sort of set between the hearing guy and the seeing guy. Two professors who'd been in the department for decades, who taught me when I was a student years before, and who, for some reason or other, had sort of fallen out over something that somebody said to somebody else some years ago, and they hadn't been speaking to each other for literally for decades. And it's sort of ironic because on the one hand, it seemed like they didn't think that anything was missing, that the person who studies vision and the eye can learn everything they need to know without having to think about the ear or the tongue or the nose, whereas the hearing guy thinks, you know, everything I need to know is within the ear and so on. So we're not losing anything by not communicating. The idea that the senses connect, on the one hand, it's sort of obvious they do. Anyone who's seen the McGurk video with the voices saying bar and dar knows that. Anyone who's, you know, thought about the ventriloquist's dummy illusion, how we hear voices where we see lips, kind of knows that the senses connect. And I suppose people have just not tried to connect them before because maybe the brain's a really complicated thing. So how on earth are we going to understand it? Maybe we break it up into parts. We say, okay, let's just study vision and make it a problem a bit easier, or let's just study hearing. But given that the senses are connected all the time, sort of inspired by some of the work coming from the neuroscience, from those studying animal models, looking at the connection between the senses in the 70s and 80s. And when I started out, I was trying to sort of apply some of the same rules of the brain to human perception. And in particular for me, I've always been interested in applying psychology, so applied cognitive psychology, trying to take the insights about how the senses are connected, and then think about how they can be used to design better warning signals or environments, or these days foods, drinks, packaging and experiences and so on. And just because no one had been looking at this area, it was really great because there's lots to do. And I could just take any experiment that somebody had done previously in vision and say, how would it work in an audio-visual situation? And the sort of idea of Sensploration is one that sort of, I think the term first coined in about 2015, and is, I think it captures as a name for all these events that were sort of happening all over the place, both in the world of sort of experiential marketing, with the likes of the Singleton Sensorium we're involved in, or the Campo Viejo Keller Lab. We have people tasting something, and there's music and there's lights and there's shapes and there's all sorts of strange stuff going through to exhibitions in museums like the Tate Sensorium in London in 2015, where again you had paintings that were to be viewed while listening to strange sounds, feeling virtual touch, smelling stuff and eating. And so this sort of Sensploration is sort of the name then for the interest that I think the general public have in understanding how their senses connect. And there's that exploration bit at the end that says it's not just what marketeers, maybe the intuitive marketeers have been doing for decades, which is creating, you know, multi-sensory experiences in store to make you buy more or drink more or shop longer. But really, it's more of a sort of questioning thing of putting people in environments and saying, we're not quite sure how the things connect. And maybe there is no right answer for how your hearing matches your vision, matches your touch. But let's explore this together, the world of your senses, hence Sensploration. And it's something I think consumers seem to be very resonate with. they're curious and they're surprised by some of the connections that we sort of show people. I want to explore them more, and then hopefully think about how those, those almost synesthetic connections between the senses can be incorporated into the design of everyday life.